On June 18, 2023, 5 people were sealed inside a vessel that had already been quietly failing for months. The Polar Prince sat above the Titanic wreck site as Titan's hatch was bolted shut from the outside, with no way to open it from within. Somewhere beneath that hull, stress fractures and anomalies from earlier dives had never been fully investigated or resolved. 1 hour and 47 minutes into the descent, every text message stopped, and the surface heard nothing more. While the world began counting down 96 hours of oxygen, that countdown had never once begun. Those 5 people were OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush, who designed and championed the vessel he was now trusting with his life. Beside him sat British billionaire Hamish Harding, Pakistani businessman Shahzada Dawood, and his 19-year-old son Suleiman, the youngest person ever to attempt that dive. The 5th was Paul-Henri Nargeolet, a French deep-sea explorer who had descended to the Titanic more than 30 times before this morning. Once that hatch was bolted, the only direction any of them could go was down. The moment Titan slipped beneath the surface, the Atlantic closed over it like a door being shut. Within the first 200 meters, every trace of sunlight was gone, and the 5 men inside were sealed in near total darkness. Pressure outside the hull was already climbing, not gradually, but relentlessly, adding roughly 1 atmosphere of force for every 10 meters of depth. The carbon fiber cylinder they sat inside had never been independently certified to survive what it was about to face. Text messages were the only link to the Polar Prince above, short acoustic pulses fired upward through the water column every 15 minutes. Each exchange was brief, almost clinical, a position update, a depth reading, a confirmation that systems were holding. At 9,000 feet, the messages were still arriving, and the crew on the surface had no reason to feel anything but routine. Then, at 10:47 in the morning, the messages simply stopped. Every dive Titan completed added invisible damage to the carbon fiber cylinder at its core. Carbon fiber doesn't bend under cyclic pressure the way metal does. It accumulates microfractures, quietly, without warning signs you can see or touch. OceanGate's own acoustic monitoring system had detected anomalies during earlier dives. Stress signals the hull was broadcasting in the only language it had. Those readings were logged, reviewed, and ultimately set aside, not because they were reassuring, but because the dives kept ending without catastrophe. No independent classification body had ever certified Titan as safe for crewed, deep ocean operations, and OceanGate had fought that oversight deliberately. So when the last text message from Titan reached the Polar Prince at 10:47 a.m. on June 18th, the hull carrying 5 people had already accumulated years of unresolved damage. The surface crew started a rescue clock, but the vessel they were counting on finding was already gone. At 10:47 a.m., the Polar Prince sent a routine ping and received nothing back. The crew logged it as a communication fault, the kind of glitch deep-sea operations absorb without alarm. What they couldn't know was that Titan had already ceased to exist, somewhere in the dark above the Titanic's bow. The implosion took less than a millisecond, a pressure event so total that the 5 people inside had no final moment of awareness. While rescue teams mobilized around the 96-hour oxygen window, the ocean had already settled back to silence. Coast Guard aircraft, naval vessels, and remotely operated submarines converged on a search grid built around a vessel that was already debris. The world held vigil over a countdown that had never once begun. And the wreckage, when it came, confirmed what the hull's own history had been quietly insisting for years.